perhaps finally it is time to start seeing sport differently in this country. For far too long, sport in India has only grown and developed in silos. We may be a 1.4 billion population, the most populated country in the world. But what really is our playing population? We are going to see a larger number of Indians get into sport in the course of the next decade. That would also mean a larger number of Indians are going to fail in sport, because that is the very nature of sport.
Hello, everybody. I've really enjoyed watching the Indian contingent in Paris look so competitive and so confident. But we are, after cheering and celebrating the Olympian effort of all our sportswomen and men, we are at that reality checkpoint. And that is when we look at the medal tally and we start asking some tough questions, which is, why didn't we do well enough? Why are we ranked at 71st amongst all countries that participated, with 5 bronzes and 1 silver, a 6 medal haul? Also, very critically, these 4 years between 2024 and 2028, these 4 years that will unfold now between the two successive Olympics, what happens here? What can we do to have a better performance? Now, I can't tell you how delighted I am to be joined by Abhinav Bindra. He's, as you know, our first individual Olympic gold medalist. He's a 5-time Olympian, and Abhinav was recently conferred with the Olympic order and has had a very good games from a very different perspective in Paris. Abhinav, thank you so much for making time.
It's probably the first games I attended as not as an athlete, so I obviously enjoyed going to different sports, looking at different performances of different athletes, and it was fantastic games. I think Paris did a wonderful job. It was games of a new era, with it being very sustainable, with no new infrastructure being built. Only one new stadium was built, the Aquatic Center, but the city looked beautiful. I mean, the city of Paris in itself is an amazing city. And so for Paris 2024 to really urbanize the games, it's fantastic, to really bring sport to the heart of the city, with these iconic backdrops, was just breathtaking. The performances of athletes from across the world was sensational. I mean, look at the 100 meters final, for example. It was just incredible to watch, and yes, I had a good games.
You were part of the relay. You got conferred the Olympic order. You got to see so many different things going on. You did a lot of work for your foundation. What was that bit like for you?
Well, my primary role in Paris was being part of the IOC's Athletes Commission, which I've been part of for the last 6.5 years. And that is an intense amount of work that one has, and responsibility that one has to undertake. And Paris was actually very intense. It was very tiring for me, because there was a lot to do. We had a lot of meetings on a day-to-day basis, starting early in the morning and sometimes ending late at night. And it was a lot of work, to be very honest. But it was fulfilling work, because to give back to the Olympic movement, to give back for the cause of athletes, for the cause of Olympism, is an incredible honor and a privilege. And while it was taxing, physically and mentally, much more taxing than as an athlete, because as an athlete, you have time to your downtime, you have to take care of yourself, and you only have to care about your own self. Here there was a larger picture at stake, and it was very different. It was a very different experience for me. But I have to say, looking back at Paris, I enjoyed the experience. It was, as I said, a wonderful game. More than anything, the aspect that I enjoyed was not really about sport. The Olympic Games is the only event left in the world where the world comes together. In a world which is so divisive, in a world which is wars, in a world which is extremely egoistic in nature, the Olympic Games is a great inspiration to the world that yes, the world can come together. There were 206 national Olympic committees and an Olympic refugee team which came together lived in an Olympic village in peace, in friendship, in harmony, yet fought very, very intensely and competitively
Yeah.
on the field of play,
Yeah.
but with those Olympic values of friendship and respect. And that, I think, was a very, very inspiring message to the whole world. And I think that to me is the legacy, the greatest legacy of the Olympic Games. And it was just so wonderful to see people from across the world just together. It was a celebration of humanity.
Yeah.
And I think the world needed it, and the world needs it even more than ever before.
You were putting up these very eloquently written tweets and posts, and a lot of them were directed at our competitors, right? At the Indian contingent. So there were medal winners, there were people who didn't make the medals, and there was something. I mean, you seem to understand and convey. You get it. You got what they were going through. For us, we are spectators, sitting and watching and not getting all the nuances of so many of their sports. What were the highs for you where the Indian contingent and our performance was concerned?
I don't have a transactional relationship with athletes in Indian sport. It's
Absolutely.
my passion and it's my heart, and
Yeah.
that's why maybe I feel differently from others. But I appreciate what goes behind the scenes of becoming an Olympian, firstly. Secondly, going there and trying to be the best that you can. Thirdly, some may achieve the outcomes that they have set their sights on, or the goals that they've set, but most won't. And that is the very nature of sport. In sport, you will encounter much more failure than success. I think India did well in many ways. India performed well in terms of overall performance, in terms of just the quality of
Yeah.
competitiveness of our athletes.
Yeah.
I think never before at an Olympic Games have we been as competitive in a wide uh, array of different sporting disciplines. However, if you have to take a reality check, as you mentioned in your introduction, it hasn't yet translated into outcomes and medals that we desire. But does that say that we've made no progress? That is probably incorrect. I think we've made a lot of progress. I think there is the support to elite athletes through the government and its programs has been incredible. I think elite athletes are supported at par, if not even better than most advanced countries. Have we made enough progress? Probably not. And just that just goes to show that winning an Olympic medal or winning medals at the Olympic Games is not a dreary task of shuffling paper. There's going to always be an adventure. There's never going to be a black and white. It's not that you put in an X amount of money and there's
Yeah.
going to be a vending machine and out
Yeah.
come the medal. This is always going to be a roller coaster. This is always going to be an adventure. There's always going to be hits. There's always going to be misses. And I think we all have to understand that and be okay with that and keep trying and keep trying to get better. But I think the bigger point that I want to make is that perhaps finally it is time to start seeing sport differently in this country. I think so far we've seen sport and sports role from a very narrow window and a very narrow outlook, which is transactional in nature. Outgo our athletes, we want medals. Uh, but we also have to start considering many elements. We may be a 1.4 billion population, the most populated country in the world. But what really is our playing population in this country?
Yeah. Did you see the Times of India cartoon, which shows our sporting culture? And this young woman says, "My dad wants me to be a sports doctor." And this
Oh,
young
really?
man lolling against a car says, "Yeah, my dad wants me to be a sports administrator." And that is the sum and substance of our sporting
Oh, that
culture.
sounds fun.
Do,
That
do you
sounds
do you
nice.
think? I think it sort of ties into the point you're making here, isn't it?
No, I think that I'm making even a larger point. I think we need
Yeah.
more Indians
Yeah.
we need to give more opportunities to young India to play sport, to experience sport for the sheer joy of playing sport, for becoming a healthier country. We're a very young country, but are we a healthy country? Probably no. We need more Indians to play sport, to imbibe values through sport. There's no better way than to build character than playing and experiencing sport. We need more Indians to just play and play, go out there and play. And we need to make that happen. A byproduct of that will be we will suddenly have more Indians dedicating 20 years of their life to elite sport. That is always going to be a very niche population. It's always going to be a very small population, and we need to give more opportunities for more young Indians to increase that niche population. And then the byproduct would be that there'll be a greater amount of depth of talent available to you across a wide variety of sports, and that automatically then slowly but surely increases your chances and medal prospects. A country of 1.4 billion people had 117 athletes at Paris. We need to make that maybe 300 or 400 going into maybe not 2028. I think it's already too late for 2028, but maybe 2032. And that should be an objective and goal to have. But if you just look at sports just from the elite aspect, you're never going to get there. You have to reverse the model. You have to look at grassroots. You have to see sports' larger role in nation building, and our athletes winning medals at the Olympics or at global events is just one aspect of the whole story. And I think that needs to be considered more. Sport has to become mainstream in policy. Our health policy must have an element of sport. Our education policy must have an element of sport. We're building smart cities or whatever. That must have an element of community sport, of building infrastructure for sport, building cities which encourage outdoor play, which have walking tracks, which have jogging track, which has a cycle lane. Yeah. So sport has to be part and parcel of every thought process across the board. And when that collective aspects, thought process starts, everything lifts. And sport then is not just a once in a 4 years story. Sport then becomes a day-to-day story where there's momentum being driven in from various quarters. And I really like to see that happening. But I mean, I just like to say that this ain't going to give you results tomorrow. There's not going to be any instant gratification with this. So we need leadership which shows a long-term vision. We need to be patient. We need to... this is an investment in your youth.
I get that this is the approach which, if seeded, if everyone plays, if we have a sporting culture in the real true sense of the word, you will get a larger number of people who compete, and then that will lift everything, and therefore a better performance at some point, right? So I get that picture you paint, and it's very well made, that argument. So if you then look at the way we've approached it so far, we had the Olympic Gold Quest, we have the TOPS program, we have a government spend, and a lot of things have gotten better. And yet the approach remains the same, would you say? And that approach is fundamentally going to bring us to this point at the end of every Olympics, which is, we are better, but we are not a sporting nation if you look at how we are and our performance.
So I think so, and I think history will tell you that, because if you continue with the current model, and I'm not saying that the current model has no merit, the current model has to still continue. It has to almost supplement the larger picture that I'm talking about. It's not that you just now focus on India on grassroots development and you're not going to focus on elite sport. That has to go almost simultaneously. But see, I mean, even if you had the rub of the green your way, maybe from 6 medals you would go up to 10 or 12 medals. But I mean, till the time you don't increase the depth of talent available to you across the board, you're only going to have that much success. I mean, 10, 12 medals is at most that this model will be able to get you through. It's not going to, how much more, how much, if you mean you're going to invest in about 100 odd athletes or 100 or 200 athletes, the rate of success is so little in an Olympic Games, not just from an India perspective, but just globally, right? 10,000, 11,000 athletes, 300 gold medals, you know the ratio already in front of you. So you have to start thinking beyond. You have to start thinking beyond this thought process, because this thought process is going to give you 10, 12 medals at the most, and 10, 12 medals for a nation the size of India is not enough, because we lack the foundation. I mean, I don't even want to start talking about nutrition. Nutrition, the whole aspect of nutrition in our country, right? And sport is part and parcel of society. Is not something which is different, but just the whole nutritional challenges for young kids for babies till the age of 5. I mean, for infants till the age of 5, we have a massive challenge there, and that again has a direct influence on sporting success. So it's a very complex and complicated thing that, yes, we want to have a scenario where we want to get 50 odd medals at the Olympics. I mean, the size of a country like India shouldn't be getting that much. But I just feel that it is still a long way away, and we still need to really go back to the drawing board, and we need to. There are many aspects to focus on. Having said that, I mean, let me finish. Having said that, I do feel that there's been a lot of good work that has also happened in the course of the last decade or so. I'm not taking that away. I'm just trying to make a point that maybe it's time for us to start thinking differently.
And like you said, go back to the drawing board. So relook the entire challenge in that sense. But so that's one part of it. The other part of it, which will continue, is the approach we already have. In these 4 years, what are the questions that need to be asked for the approach that we've taken so far, given that that is what we'll continue with, right? And we're not going to disband that. So what are the questions to be asked? Because,
that's a good point that you make. That's a very good point you make, because, LA is 4 years away. You brought up LA introduction. You already know who your talent available for LA is. It's not that suddenly now 100 new athletes are going to pop out of somewhere and you're going to have those resources available to you. You generally have an idea who 90% who your Olympic hopefuls for 28 are going to be. So we already know that. So I think what requires is fine-tuning, better coordination, perhaps between different stakeholders. Running sport in India is a challenging aspect, because there are also multiple stakeholders. You have national federations, you have the Indian Olympic Association, you have the government, you have the Sports Authority of India, who are the biggest funders of sport. Then you have also
the private foundations
NGOs,
and the
NGOs, and of course, sport still remains a state subject. So there is also the state there. In many ways, many cases, there is development happening in those areas as well. So it's a complex aspect, and I think there is it's no nuclear secret that governance in Indian sport has been a challenge. Has been a continuous challenge. Some federations and some aspects of governance have definitely improved, but I feel that there is still a long way to go towards improving. And again, there is no easy fix here. There is no easy fix. I mean, you also have to see in terms of your human talent available for governance in sport. There is one field of thought that you should replace all your administrators with athletes. I don't believe that is the only solution.
Why not?
Feel, athletes are not just how as athletes may not be natural
The
coaches.
greatest managers, coaches.
Managers and administrators. There is a role. There may be some who would be fantastic, but not every athlete is going to become an administrator. But what we also need,
we have Abhinav is politicians.
What we also need to see come up is we need to find a way to improve governance in sport. We need to build leadership. It's not just going to come out from the sky suddenly that you have 40 people who are going to drive Indian sport forward. You have athletes, you have people passionate about Indian sport. You have to find a way to empower them. You have to find a way to get them in tune with global best practice in terms of creating a high performance environment to grow their sport. Because that talent for governance is also not available. It's an easy thing to say, politicians are bad. these are the governance is bad, and I agree that it's not at its best. But who do you replace that with? Do you have an answer to that? We don't have that line or that leadership line ready.
Every solution that you're offering or every thought that you're offering is absolutely well made and well taken, but these are all, like you said, drawing board. We have to just kind of redraw everything. We have to go back and create a new paradigm, and that hasn't been possible. I'm not sure it will be possible, though there will be a lot of people who will be listening very, very closely and carefully to what you're saying. But we've seen that we've not managed those outcomes. Sharda Ugra, journalist we admire tremendously, she's just written, it's good to remember that the majority of India's sports federations generate neither cultural value nor sporting success, and certainly no economic revenue to sustain themselves, and have neither the dynamism nor the vision to do it. And to think that our taxes have been supporting these ultimate underperformers for decades. Now, these are very strong words, but and
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and I mean, I don't completely disagree with Sharda, but I'd like to ask her what is the solution.
What is the solution? Because
The solution is only long term in nature. There is no easy quick fix here, I feel. I mean, if tomorrow you have to, harness or you have to build a second line of leadership for sport in India who will govern sport, take sport forward, it's not going to happen overnight, right? You'll have to groom individuals, you will have to identify individuals,
Yeah,
you'll have
yeah.
to, end of the day, it is also getting into a federation. You can't just parachute them into the federation. A federation is an elected body. You have to get
Yeah, it
into
has its rules. Yeah, yeah.
you have to get into the whole aspects of sports politics, but you need to definitely have a larger pool of talent available to you, that is available to different sports to be able to make use of the talent. Having said that, I mean, we are a young country with a lot of and passion for sport is at its peak. I think sport is being consumed more, played more at a historic level. So there are many young Indians who want to involve themselves in Indian sport. We have to find an organized, structured way in trying to find a way to improve the aspect of governance. You can have a sports law, you can have a code, you can have a constitution, but if you don't have the right people, it ain't going to get you anywhere.
So what would you want to see in the next 4 years? From
See,
the
I
from the
what
from
I
the governance point of view, and then from the
yeah.
athletes point of view, because the point you make that elite athletes are getting very good support, then what is the next thing they need to do? Because we had so many fourth place finishes, so many bronzes.
So I think from a 2028 perspective, I think we need to simply fine tune what we have. I think you're not going to make you don't have the time to make extreme decisions that will have an impact in 4 years' time. I think you've done good work. You've sown seeds for improvement. We've seen improvement already in Paris in many ways. And you just need to fine tune. You need to keep learning. You need to find better ways to coordinate the whole effort. So that I feel has to happen towards LA. But I think we need to start now from the larger perspective for 432 and beyond in order to identify all the challenges, and the challenges are pretty clear, and then really find a way to address these challenges from a long term perspective.
No,
These
and
challenges
this
are
is a
not going
government
to be
initiative, or is this a federation level initiative, or is this like a larger Sports Authority of India initiative? Where would this begin?
sport is about teamwork, and
Yeah.
for far too long, sport in India has only grown and developed in silos, and that unfortunately has been a limitation and a drawback. So I think it is about getting all stakeholders together and working collectively as a team, and it is all end of the day about teamwork. But again, I just like to say again that all these larger aspects that what I'm talking about are not going to give you results tomorrow, are not going to give you results
Yeah.
probably to leave in LA. But if you don't start, you're not going to ever start. So you have to start and really have that long-term vision in play.
What about athletes? What about them from their perspective? Because you're someone, you did 2000, you did 2004, I think you were really at a point where you didn't feel you could go on, and then there you were at 2008, walking away with that gold medal. So what is it? And a lot of talk about mental conditioning of the Indian sports person, and Lakshya Sen is now the big example of a guy who seemed to have it all and didn't convert. And so what do you have to say to athletes?
This whole mental conditioning thing is so talked about and so talked about so loosely. But again, everybody
Not
forgets the most
understood
important.
fully.
The biggest important point is, before athletes, we are humans. And firstly, you have to see how balanced you are as a human being. Because your balance, as simply as you as a human being, is going to have a direct influence on how you will react on the field of play, specifically in moments of duress, in moments of high pressure. So I think another change that needs to happen long term is that for far too long our athletes have been in a position where all their eggs are in one basket. It's all or nothing. Our self-worth is almost
Yeah.
dependent on where our name will appear on the ranking list of a sporting competition. And if you really think of that, that is extremely, it's crazy that continues to happen. If you look at evolved or advanced sporting communities or countries, majority of their athletes have a greater balance in life. They have an aspect of a dual career. They have an aspect of ensuring that there is education in place. Many athletes across the world have jobs, serious jobs where they have to even go to work, and it's not just a job on paper. So
Yeah.
having a degree of balance as human beings, having an aspect of a dual career for athletes, I believe is extremely important from two
And we
aspects. From
no
two
complete.
aspects. And the two aspects are, A, we are going to see a larger number of Indians get into sport in the course of the next decade. That would also mean a larger number of Indians are going to fail in sport, because that is the very nature of sport. And we need to ensure that this human potential that you has a life after sport. And you're not going to be able to give them a life, each one of them a life after sport, by ensuring a job, because that ain't sustainable. You
Yeah.
have to find a way to build your programs, which are also skilling up athletes in different ways during playing days. And I'm not saying that has to take anything away from training. I'm just saying half an hour a day or 1 hour a day where you put your mind to something else
Yeah.
and build that skill there. I do believe that will also ensure a greater degree of balance as a human being. And that, I believe, will have a direct influence also on your performances on the field of play. Because you don't then go on the field of play into an Olympic Games with everything on the line.
So,
Uh,
so when Simone Biles actually decided not to participate, and see her come back, you're saying that mental health in that sense, not mental strength, in terms of mental conditioning and strength when you're actually performing on a given day of the competition, but an overall mental health needs to be
I'm
prioritized.
talking
That's
about just mental. I'm just talking about balance in life, mental balance in life. There are three aspects: there's balance, there's mental health, and there is mental performance in sport. And sometimes, and most times, we all forget about the first two aspects. But the
yeah,
base of mental performance in sport is
comes from
dependent
these
on the
two.
first two. If you don't have the first two going your way, there are holes in the foundation.
So if someone is saying Lakshya Sen needs better mental conditioning, mental performance, or many of our athletes who were at four, is that something then that is based on the first two, or that's another conversation? That's something else,
I
isn't
don't know.
it?
I mean, I don't want to get into personal examples because I
Specifics.
don't know what his life is
Fair
like.
enough.
I don't know
Fair enough.
what his situation is. But I'm just giving a general overview, which I feel that from the outside, I just feel that too needs to change, and this aspect needs to develop, and that's where I come back to my first point. Uh, Having sport a very important part of education policy is critical from many aspects. I mean, you look at the American system; their entire talent comes out of the collegiate system, from colleges. That is their talent pool. So, but that also ensures all these other aspects. I mean, most American athletes will have an education. I'm saying all this because I didn't do it well, by the way. I just
Those are your lessons.
this was my greatest learning from my sports career. I may have achieved some goals in my sports career, but I failed miserably. I failed absolutely miserably in achieving my fullest potential. And I attribute, now that I have a chance to look back, I attribute that failure to simply the lack of balance I had as a human being while I was an athlete. My most successful years as an athlete came when I was actually a student athlete. Because I had only so many hours to go and train. I had so many hours to go. I had to go and study. I had to have a social life. When I became obsessed with performance, it gave me goal. It helped me achieve my goal, but it didn't help me achieve my fullest potential for sure.
So that's the message you want to leave.
That's the message I
athletes
keep
with?
giving to everybody as well, and to athletes as well, specifically to athletes, that they must consider this aspect as well, because I think it's a very, very important aspect.
Do you want to talk about our most heartbreaking story of Indian sport, Vinesh Fogart and her disqualification? Do you see wrestling rules change? And do you think more could have been done to lodge that petition or that complaint by the IOA? Because this was done by her, isn't it? The appeal to the Court of International.
Well, my heart goes out to Vinesh. I mean, my heart goes out to Vinesh at the outset. I mean, she's a hero of mine, just for the resilience that she's shown on and off the field of play, and to continue and to keep inspiring the country. That there's no doubt about it. She's a hero of mine. I'm trying to answer your question in what could you, in terms of appeal, what more could have been done? But what were you trying to appeal? I mean, the cat's ruling is out, and I've gone skimmed through the arguments, but the rules are very, very clear. Whether the rules are right or whether the rules are wrong, there were rules, and sport is governed by a set of rules. If you don't have rules, where do you stop? I mean, the 100-meter final was won by a tenth or a thousandth of a second or something like that. Tomorrow, should we also tamper that? I mean, is 100 grams too little? Should we make it 150? Then, I mean, there are always going to be rules, and unfortunately, retrospectively, it becomes very, very difficult to challenge rules. Whether the rules are right or wrong, that is something. That's a different story. Whether they can be changed, I don't know, because I'm no expert in wrestling. That is to see that the wrestling fraternity would know more. The medical side of it would know more. I just don't have enough knowledge to really make a comment on it. But of course, from the outside, from a normal layperson, it seems very harsh. But I'm sure that they have their thought also on why they made it like that, right? I mean, you have to look at both perspectives. Of course, it's harsh from an athlete's perspective, but if you speak to somebody in the federation, their argument is for two weigh-ins is that you can have a weigh-in on day one, and then you can have an athlete go and put on eat and put on 4 kgs of weight, and that's a massive advantage then that you have in that weight category. So that's that thought process as well. How do you find a common ground and a fine balance between the aspect of the well-being of athlete?
Disqualification and no ranking really hurt. I up to the point of, okay, you don't make the weigh in on the second day, so you don't get to play that. Up to that, okay, I get a bit of the rule, but to be disqualified in despite of having reached that far, that felt a bit too difficult to take. I mean, and
But then
I'm
do you
sitting.
weigh in after every bout, or what? Do you do 3 weigh-ins after every bout?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
We are just armchair critics, both of us here, and we're just armchair commentators. I don't know. I have no idea.
India has made its plans to host, to want to bid to host the Olympics in 2036 very clear. The Prime Minister himself has made this, statement at the IOC session in Mumbai last year. what's your assessment of this ambition? And it's good to have ambition, but what do you
Well,
make?
absolutely. I think we have to have ambitions, and I think it's always good to aim high. I think that's positive, and I think I appreciate that. I mean, you have to start. I mean, you never get an Olympics if you don't bid. It's a long process. But having
Yeah.
said that, I think what we really need to see is that our even our bid or our possible hosting of the Olympics has to act as a catalyst for change. It has to go beyond the 2 weeks of sporting competition. Hosting an Olympic Games is an opportunity for development, and development in many ways. All the aspects that we've been talking about in this conversation. How can you use that as a springboard for change? So I don't know where things stand. I'm not privy to where we are at in terms of the whole aspect of bidding, etc. But I'd really like to see that aspect coming into play, where in play where when and if whenever we bid, our bid really captures that opportunity to really change the dynamics of sport in India, to really make sport more democratized in many ways. We give more opportunities to young India from across the country to play sport, to experience sport, how sport can act as a catalyst for change and development in many areas: health, education, um, gender equality. I think,
Absolutely
sport role.
critical.
There is very powerful to see role models coming out of sport. It breaks a lot of glass ceilings and inspires many in different ways. So in many ways, that bit of hosting the games has to act as that a catalyst of change, and I'd really like to see that larger vision come into play, which goes far beyond the 2 weeks of sporting competitions. Hosting an Olympics must build a legacy pre-games. It must
Yeah.
build a legacy during the games, and it must have a long-lasting legacy after the games. So for me, that is going to be very important to see how that evolves.
If work begins on that bid, I don't know why, but I see you as very a big part of those proceedings. Maybe a Sebastian Coe or
You're just being kind. You're over. You're probably
the head of India's Olympic organizing committee.
no. I don't know how that will progress, but if there is anything I can contribute towards, I'm always happy to contribute towards the development of sport in India. As I said
One,
early on, my relationship with Indian sport comes from my heart. It comes through deep passion. I gave a lot of my life to sport, and then my relationship with sport in India is anything but transactional. It's not transactional
yeah.
at all.
It isn't. Do you want to close with one final word on the kind of work that you're doing in Odisha, in states like that, at the grassroots school level? Because I think it ties up to the larger point that you make.
Yeah, so my primary outreach to sport in India has been through my foundation, which has been in
Yeah.
play for a few years now. We work in three different pillars. Our first pillar is that of intervention. We give scholarships to about 250 very young athletes between the ages of 12 and 16 called STEAM, where we incorporate science, technology, engineering, analytics, and medicine into their training, into their grassroots training. We also have a program under intervention called Sport for Life, where we offer 100 free surgeries to athletes who get injured. And these need not be elite athletes, but athletes at the grassroots level,
Yeah.
athletes you've never heard of, who don't have the requisite support but do get injured. It can be the end of their career. Last year, for example, we did about 90 odd surgeries. We helped the athletes through their recovery phase and also the phase, the mental, psychological aspect as well during injury. The second aspect of our work is education, because I believe that developing Indian sport is not just about developing athletes, it's about developing the ecosystem that surrounds the athlete. So we've set up a sports science and research institute where it started. We're giving scholarships and, of course, degrees in sports science, in physiotherapy, etc., and we're going to only increase that. We do a lot of work on athlete mental health because it's primarily stemming out of my role at the IOC's working group on mental health. I've been part and parcel of it since its inception. So bringing all the global best practices into the sporting environment in India on mental health. The third and probably for me the most important pillar is using the power of sport for social good. There we run a very large-scale program, which is the Olympic Values Education Program. It is an IOC program where we use the power of sport to, of course, build to imbibe values into kids, to build character through sport. Of course, making kids more physically active, making them healthier, but really the whole idea is to imbibe values. Sport teaches you so much. It teaches you how to win, but most importantly, it teaches you how to lose. It teaches you integrity. It teaches you teamwork, camaraderie, and really imbibing these values. We are currently in play in 2 states in Odisha and Assam, impacting close to 10 million school children. We've done a lot of hard work to get there so far, and it's been a very, very fulfilling experience for me in the course of the last years to do this. I often visit these schools in both these states. These are government schools, many in rural areas, and just to see the enthusiasm of young children I've been given this opportunity to play, enjoy sport, and really learn through sport has been a very rewarding experience for me personally. Our last program, which I always forget, is an environmental project that we put in. We run an environmental project called the Odisha Ridley Forest Project in collaboration and partnership with the Odisha Forest Department. They are, of course, the primary stakeholders in this. And this project is part of the Olympic Forest Network, where we are kind of in 1,500 hectares of land. We're using certain areas for restoration, for ecological restoration, for biodiversity, for increasing green cover, etc., etc. So that is something that we've been working hard at as well. So it's a wide area of work which certainly keeps me on my
And I think everything that you've outlined that you've been doing at the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, it stems from your outlook, isn't it? Which is that it's not transactional, it's not about that medal, it is about an entire way of life and being where sports and everything that it offers you becomes central, isn't it? And addresses a lot of problems or a lot of challenges that India has, which is not about sports. So I think it's fabulous. And
Thank
thank you, Abhinav, for making time. And it's good
my
to catch
pleasure.
up after a
My
very, very
pleasure.
long time. Thank you. Thank you.